2 Chronicles chapter 29. Hezekiah became king when he was 25 years old, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abiah, the daughter of Zechariah. He did right in the eyes of Adonai, just as his father David had done. In the first month of the first year of his reign, he opened the doors of the house of Adonai and repaired them. He brought in the Kohanim and the Levites and assembled them into the eastern square. Then he said to them, "Listen to me, Levites, sanctify yourselves and sanctify the house of Adonai, the God of your fathers, and remove the defilement out of the holy place. Our fathers acted unfaithfully and did evil in the sight of Adonai Eloheinu and have forsaken him. They turned their faces away from Adonai's dwelling place and turned their backs on him. They also shut the doors of the porch and put out the lamps. They will not burn incense or offering any burnt offerings in the holy place to the God of Israel. Therefore the wrath of Adonai was upon Judah and Jerusalem. He has made them an object of horror, dread, and scorn, as you are seeing with your own eyes. Behold, for this our fathers have fallen by the sword, and our sons, daughters, and wives are in captivity. Now it is in my heart to make a covenant with Adonai, the God of Israel, so that his fierce anger may turn away from us. My sons, now do not be negligent, for Adonai has chosen you to stand before him, to serve him, and to be his ministers, and to burn incense to him." Then these Levites arose from the sons of Kohath, Mahath, son of Amasai, and Joel, the son of Azariah. From the sons of Merari, Kish, son of Abdi, and Azariah, son of Jehalalel. From the sons of Gershon, Joah, son of Zima, and Eden, son of Joah. From the sons of Elisaphan, Shimri, and Jael. From the sons of Asaph, Zechariah, and Mattaniah. From the sons of Heman, Jael, and Shimei. And from the sons of Jeduthun, Shemaiah, and Uziel. When they had gathered their brothers and sanctified themselves, they went in, as the king ordered, according to the words of Adonai, to cleanse the house of Adonai. So the Kohanim went into the inner parts of the house of Adonai to purify it. They brought out to the courtyard the house of Adonai every impure thing that they found in the temple of Adonai. Then the Levites received it and carried it out to the Kidron Valley. They began the consecration on the first day of the first month, and by the 8th day of the month they reached the porch of Adonai. For 8 days they consecrated the house of Adonai and finished on the 16th day of the first month. Then they went in to King Hezekiah and said, "We have purified the entire house of Adonai, the altar of burnt offering with all its vessels, the table of the rows of bread with all the vessels. We have also prepared and consecrated all the articles that King Ahaz discarded in his unfaithfulness while he was king. Behold, they are now before the altar of Adonai." Then King Hezekiah arose early, gathered the leaders of the city, and went up to the house of Adonai. They brought 7 bulls, 7 rams, 7 lambs, and 7 he-goats as a sin offering for the kingdom, the sanctuary, and Judah, and he commanded the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, to offer them on the altar of Adonai. So they slaughtered the bulls, and the Kohanim took the blood and sprinkled it against the altar. Next day they slaughtered the rams and sprinkled the blood against the altar. Then they slaughtered the lambs and sprinkled the blood against the altar. The he-goats for the sins offering were brought before the king and congregation, and they laid their hands on them. The Kohanim then slaughtered them and purified the altar with their blood to make atonement for all Israel. For the king commanded that the burnt offerings and the sin offerings should be made for all Israel. He stationed the Levites in the house of Adonai with cymbals, harps, and lyres, according to the command of Adonai, of Gad the king's seer, and the Nathan the prophet. for the command was by the authority of Adonai through his prophets. So the Levites stood with David's instruments, and the Kohanim with the trumpets. Then Hezekiah gave the order to sacrifice the burnt offerings on the altar. When the burnt offerings began, the songs of Adonai also began with trumpets, together with the instrument of King David of Israel. The entire congregation prostrated themselves while the singers sang and the trumpeters played. All this continued until the burnt offering was finished. Now, at the completion of the burnt offering, the king and all who were present with him knelt down and worshipped. Moreover, King Hezekiah and the officials ordered the Levites to sing praises to Adonai with the words of David and Asaph the seer. So they sang praises with gladness and bowed down and worshipped. Then Hezekiah responded and said, "You have now consecrated yourselves to Adonai. Come near and bring sacrifices and thank offerings into the house of Adonai." The congregation brought in sacrifices and thank offerings, and all whose hearts were willing brought burnt offerings. The number of the burnt offerings that the congregation brought was 70 bulls, 100 rams, and 200 lambs, all of these as a burnt offering to Adonai. The animals consecrated as sacrifices were 600 bulls and 3,000 sheep. The Kohanim, however, were too few to flay all the burnt offerings, so their kinsmen, the Levites, helped them until the work was completed, until other Kohanim had consecrated themselves. For the Levites had been more conscientious to consecrate themselves than the Kohanim. And there were also a great many burnt offerings, along with the fat of the peace offerings and the drink offerings at every burnt offering. Thus the avodah of the house of Adonai was re-established. Hezekiah and all the people rejoiced because of what God had enabled the people to accomplish, because it happened so suddenly. Chapter 30. Hezekiah then sent word to all Israel and Judah, and also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh to come to the house of Adonai at Jerusalem to keep the Passover of Adonai, the God of Israel. The king and his officials and the entire congregation in Jerusalem had decided to celebrate Passover in the second month, for they were not able to celebrate it at the regular time, since not enough Kohanim had consecrated themselves, nor had the people assembled in Jerusalem. The matter seemed right in the eyes of the king and of the entire community, so they decided to issue a decree and to proclaim it throughout all Israel from Beersheba to Dan, calling the people to come to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover for Adonai, the God of Israel, for it had not been celebrated as prescribed for a long time. At the king's command, the couriers went throughout all Israel and Judah with letters from the king and his officials saying, "You men of Israel, turn back to Adonai, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and he will return to the remnant of you who escaped from the hands of the kings of Syria. Do not be like your fathers and brothers who acted unfaithfully against Adonai, the God of their fathers, so that he made them a horror as you see. Do not stiffen your neck as your fathers did, but reconcile to Adonai, and come to his temple which he has consecrated forever, and worship Adonai your God, that his burning anger may turn away from you. For if you return to Adonai, your brothers and children will receive compassion before their captors, and will return to this land. For Adonai your God is compassionate and merciful. He will not turn his face away from you if you return to him." As the couriers traveled from town to town throughout the country of Ephraim and Manasseh and as far as Zebulun, they were scorned and mocked. Nevertheless, some men from Asher, Manasseh, and Zebulun humbled themselves and came to Jerusalem. The hand of God was also on Judah to give them one heart to do what the king and the officials commanded by the word of Adonai. Now a very large assembly gathered in Jerusalem to celebrate the feast of Matzot in the second month. They arose and removed the altars and all the incense altars that were in Jerusalem and threw them into the Kidron Valley. Then they slaughtered the Passover lamb on the 14th day of the second month. The Kohanim and the Levites were ashamed and consecrated themselves and brought burnt offerings into the house of Adonai. They stood at their post as prescribed in the Torah of Moses, the man of God. The Kohanim sprinkled the blood that they received from the hands of the Levites, for there were many in the congregation that had not consecrated themselves. Therefore the Levites were in charge of slaughtering the Passover lambs for everyone that was not ceremonially clean, in order to consecrate them to Adonai. Although a great multitude of the people, many of them from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun, had not purified themselves, they still ate the Passover lamb, contrary to what is written. But Hezekiah prayed for them, saying, May Adonai, who is good, atone for everyone who prepares his heart to seek Adonai, the God of his fathers, even though he is not pure according to the rules of the sanctuary. Adonai heard Hezekiah and healed the people. So the children of Israel who were present in Jerusalem celebrated the feast of Matzot for 7 days with great gladness. The Levites and the Kohanim were praising Adonai every day with loud instruments for Adonai. Then Hezekiah spoke encouragingly to all the Levites who demonstrated good understanding of the service of Adonai. For 7 days they ate their assigned portions while sacrificing peace offerings and praising Adonai, the God of their fathers. Then the whole congregation decided to celebrate 7 more days, so for another 7 days they celebrated with gladness. Hezekiah, king of Judah, contributed 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep to the congregation, and the officials contributed 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep to the congregation, and great numbers of Kohanim consecrated themselves. The entire assembly of Judah rejoiced with the Kohanim and the Levites, and all who had assembled from Israel, both the strangers coming from the land of Israel and the residents of Judah. There was great joy in Jerusalem, for nothing like this had happened in Jerusalem since the time of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. Then the Levitical Kohanim arose and blessed the people, and Adonai heard their voice, for their prayer reached heaven, his holy dwelling place. Chapter 31. When all this was finished, all Israel who were present, went out to the towns of Judah and smashed the pillars, smashed the Asherah poles, and demolished the high places and the altars throughout all Judea and Benjamin, as well as throughout the Ephraim and Manasseh, until they had destroyed them all. Then all Bnei Israel returned to their towns, each their own property. Then Hezekiah reestablished the divisions of the Kohanim and the Levites together with their divisions, each of the Kohanim and Levites according to his service, for burnt offering, peace offerings, to minister, to praise, or to sing praises in the gates of the courts of Adonai. The king also contributed a portion of his own assets of the burnt offerings, the morning and the evening burnt offerings, and the burnt offerings for Shabbatot, the new moons, and the Moadim, as it is written in the Torah of Adonai. Moreover, he commanded the people, the residents of Jerusalem, to give the portion allotted to the Kohanim and the Levites, so that they might devote themselves to the Torah of Adonai. As soon as the word spread, Bnei Israel gave generously the first fruits of their grain, wine, oil, honey, and all the produce of the fields, as well as tithe of all the abundance. The children of Israel and Judah who lived in the town of Judah also brought in the tithe of bulls and sheep, and the tithe of the sacred things consecrated to Adonai their God. They piled them in heaps. In the 3rd month the heaps began to accumulate and finished in the 7th month. When Hezekiah and the officials came and saw the heaps, they blessed Adonai and his people Israel. Hezekiah asked the Kohanim and the Levites about the heaps. Azariah, the chief Kohan from the house of Zadok, replied to him, saying, Ever since the gifts began to be brought into the house of Adonai, we have had enough to eat and more than enough, for Adonai has blessed his people with plenty left over. Then Hezekiah ordered them to prepare storerooms in the house of Adonai, and they prepared them. They faithfully brought in the offerings and the tithes of the consecrated gifts. Conaniah the Levite was the leader in charge over them, and Shimei his brother was next in rank. Jehiel, Azaziah, Nahath, Asahel, Jerimoth, Jozabad, Eliel, Ismashiach, Mahath, and Benaiah were supervisors under Conaniah and Shimei his brother, by the appointment of Hezekiah the king and Azariah the leader in charge of the house of God. Kor, the son of Imnah the Levite, keeper of the east gate, was over the free offerings of God, distributing the offerings of Adonai and the consecrated gifts. Eden, Miniamin, Jeshua, Shemaiah, Amariah, and Shekinah faithfully assisted him in the towns of the Kohanim, making allocations to their brothers by divisions, to great and little alike, only considering genealogical records to the males 3 years old and upward, to all who entered into the house of Adonai, to perform the daily duties according to their responsibilities and their divisions, to the Kohanim, who were genealogically registered by their ancestral houses, as well as to the Levites 20 years old and upward, according to their duties and their divisions. The genealogical registry included all their little ones, their wives and sons and daughters of the entire assembly. Thus, in their faithfulness, they consecrated themselves as holy. As for the sons of Aaron, the Kohanim, who lived in the fields of the common lands of their towns, in every town, men were designated by name to distribute portions to all the males among the Kohanim and to all who were genealogically registered among the Levites. Thus Hezekiah did throughout all Judah. He did what is good, right, and true before Adonai his God. Every work he undertook in the service of the house of God, and in the Torah and the mitzvot, and to seek his God, he did wholeheartedly and succeeded. Chapter 32. After these acts of faithfulness, Sennacherib king of Assyria came and invaded Judah. He escaped against the fortified cities, intending to break into them for himself. When Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib had come and intended to wage war against Jerusalem, he consulted with his officers and warriors about blocking the waters of the springs outside the city, and they supported him. Many people assembled and blocked off all the springs and the raging wadi in the land, saying, "Why should the kings of Assyria come and find plenty of water?" Then he took courage and rebuilt the entire wall that had been broken down, raised up the towers, added another outer wall, fortified the Millo in the city of David, and made plenty of weapons and shields. He also appointed military officers over the people and assembled them before him in the square at the city gate, and encouraged them, saying, "Hasak, be courageous, do not be afraid or dismayed by the king of Assyria and the whole horde that is with him, for we have more with us than he has with him. With him is an arm of flesh, but with us is Adonai Eloheinu, who help us and to fight our battles." So the people were encouraged by the words of King Hezekiah of Judah. After this, when King Sennacherib of Assyria, while he and all his forces with him were besieging Lachish, sent his servants to Jerusalem to Hezekiah king of Judah and to all Judah who were in Jerusalem, saying, "Thus says King Sennacherib of Assyria, what are you relying on that you would stay in Jerusalem under siege? If not Hezekiah misleading you, is not Hezekiah misleading you to let you die by famine and thirst, saying, Adonai Eloheinu will deliver us from the hand of the king of Assyria? Has not the same Hezekiah removed his high places and his altars, and commanded Judah and Jerusalem, saying, You shall worship before one altar, and upon it you shall burn incense? Do you not know what I and my fathers have done to all the peoples of the lands? Were the gods of the nations of the lands ever able to deliver their hand out of my hand? Who among all the gods of these nations, which my father utterly destroyed, could deliver his people from my hand? How then is your God able to deliver you from my hand? So now do not let Hezekiah deceive you or mislead you like this. Do not believe him, for no God of any nation or any kingdom has been able to deliver his people from my hand and from the hand of my fathers. How much less will your God deliver you from my hand?" His servant spoke further against Adonai Elohim and against his servant Hezekiah. Sennacherib also wrote letters reviling Adonai, the God of Israel, speaking against him, saying, "Just as the gods of the nations of the lands have not delivered their people from my hand, so the king of Hezekiah shall not deliver his people from my hand." Then they cried out loudly in Hebrew to the people of Jerusalem who were on the wall to terrify and frighten them in order to capture the city. They spoke against the God of Jerusalem as of the gods of the peoples of the earth made by human hands. Then King Hezekiah and the prophet Isaiah the son of Amos prayed about this and cried out to heaven. Then Adonai sent an angel who annihilated every mighty warrior, commander, and officer in the camp of the king of Assyria. So he withdrew in disgrace to his own land. Then he entered the house of his God. Some of his own children struck him down with the sword. Thus Adonai delivered Hezekiah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem from the hand of Sennacherib the king of Assyria, and from the hand of all, and helped them in every way. Many brought offerings to Adonai in Jerusalem and valuable gifts to King Hezekiah of Judah. From then on, he was highly regarded in the eyes of all the nations. In those days, Hezekiah became deathly ill, but he prayed to Adonai, who responded to him and gave him a sign. But Hezekiah did not respond according to the favor done to him. His heart became haughty, so wrath came upon him and upon Judah and Jerusalem. Then Hezekiah humbled himself for the pride in his heart, both he and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that the wrath of Adonai did not fall upon them in the days of Hezekiah. Now Hezekiah had very abundant riches and honor. He even made treasuries for silver, gold, precious stones, spices, shields, and for all kinds of valuables, and storehouses for the harvests of grain, wine, and oil, and stalls for all kinds of cattle, sheepfolds for the flocks. Moreover, he built towns and acquired flocks and herds in abundance, for God had given him very many possessions. It was also Hezekiah who stopped the upper springs of the waters of Gihon and channeled them downward to the west side of the city of David. Hezekiah succeeded in all that he did. But when the ambassadors of the princes of Babylon were sent to him to inquire about the wonder that had happened in the land, God left him alone to test him, to know all that was in his heart. Now the rest of the acts of Hezekiah and his good deeds, behold, they are written in the vision of the prophet Isaiah son of Amos in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. So Hezekiah slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the upper sections of the tombs of the sons of David. All Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem honored him at his death. His son Manasseh became king in his place.